I haven't seen a lot being said about it. And I think the parallels I see will be obvious from the way I describe it. So, what happened was that Nasser seized the Suez Canal, which until then had been administered by Britain. And Anthony Eden was the prime minister of the UK, and he had been in Churchill's cabinet during World War II, and the World War II experience was really deep in his heart. And he felt that letting Egypt get away with this would be like appeasement, and he was not going to do that. And the French felt similarly, and the way this is kind of remembered in the history books is that the response in the crisis was a kind of collusion between Britain, France, and Israel, and maybe it's remembered that way because they weren't always very forthright in their public statements. But I think that Britain and France were very serious about this, and they talked to the Israelis, and the Israelis wanted to help. And from the Israeli point of view, the memories of the War of Independence were very fresh. And what was remembered was that Israel was alone defending itself during the War of Independence. And Israel was really very happy to be in alliance with great powers, which were how France and the UK were then viewed. And, and so they were eager to take part in this. And the general plan was that Israel should advance in the Sinai, should capture the Sinai, and then Britain and France should call for a ceasefire, and then Britain and France should take a military action to, at the very least, retake the Suez Canal. And so this was the plan. And now I was thinking about describing this, and I read the Wikipedia page on the Suez Crisis, which is excellent and includes many details that I'm not totally on top of. But there were various possible plans that the British and French could have adopted, and they were seriously considering an invasion of the main part of Egypt in order to cause regime change to bring down the Nasser regime. And they discussed and chose among various plans, and they ended up choosing a kind of amphibious operation against the Suez Canal. I think Port Said is one of the major locations on the Suez Canal, and they actually seized Port Said. And if the operation had continued, they were going to take over the entire Suez Canal in order to restore the status quo ante that the British were administering it. Now, at this time, Eisenhower was president of the United States, and Eisenhower had a policy that was strongly anti colonialist. He did not support what the British and French were doing because he viewed British management of the Suez Canal as part of the colonialist legacy. So the Americans and also the Soviets were at least taking diplomatic actions that were aimed at slowing or stopping what the British and French were doing. As we know, great powers, when they're undertaking military actions, are often affected by economic events. And what ended the crisis was actually an American instigated economic event, which was that Eisenhower's treasury caused a run on the pound. And after this happened, the British couldn't really continue with the war. So in this way, the whole thing stopped. The Israelis occupied the Sinai for several months after that, but eventually retreated. And the outcome of the war is remembered as Nasser obtaining control of the Suez Canal and Britain and France no longer being able to act as independent great powers. That was what I wanted to refresh, and I'll just let anyone else who wants to say anything speak.
So this was discussed on state TV of the Islamic Republic of all places as a way to compare it to the current what's happening regarding the Strait of Hormuz. And the person who was discussing this, I mean, it was one of the media within Iran, to be more precise. The person who was discussing this was suggesting that if we don't give up the Strait of Hormuz, we will fall as well. Because even if we keep it, we're going to have a. There were two discussions. One person who was saying that a short term win by Jamal Abdel Nasser was eventually led to his fall. So it initially brought him glory and brought him overconfidence that was lynched into that was eventually caused him to launch another maritime blockade after that triggered a catastrophic military defeat by Israel that eventually led to his downfall, right? So that's the argument that some people are making, that yeah, we could, even if we win by keeping the Strait of Hormuz, is at what cost? We'll basically turn the whole world against us. But because some people are using that as an example to show that we should do the same thing and stand up against global powers and win just like he did. But then there was this other person that was mentioning that, well, he actually didn't win at the end, right? Like standing up to world powers does have its consequences. You could have short term wins, but long term you could lose. This is not a stable kind of situation to be in. What do you think about that, by the way, Nets?
That's very interesting. My own point of view is somewhat different. I'm a child of Israelis, so I have what I think of as more the Israeli point of view, but possibly the Israeli point of view from that era and not from the present. But the way that Israelis, at least then, thought about this was that, of course, the goal should have been to win back the Suez Canal, and that the British and French really fucked it up, and that the Israeli lesson from this was that when one acts, it's important to act quickly and decisively and really immediately achieve the outcome. And it was believed, at least by my parents in Israel, that Anthony Eden had been too slow. And I think this kind of point of view, which I believe was widespread, is what led to things like the Six-Day War, which were what was a really rapid, operation that managed to happen before any diplomacy could get in its way.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for that, Nets. But also just a quick reminder, though, that if anybody is doing a parallel between that and the Strait of Hormuz, we have to keep everybody should keep in mind an important difference. The Suez is a canal, Hormuz is a strait, meaning that was one of them is man-made, the other one is natural, meaning that Egypt, at the end of the day, if it's man-made, it makes more sense for them to say like this is ours. Nobody could say that the Strait of Hormuz is ours, like the Islamic Republic is doing, because it's not made by them. It's natural. It's a natural water. So at the end of the day, the world could accept Egypt saying that this is ours because, we could argue that they made it. Technically, that's not fair because without the British. they would never make it. Without the British and the French, they would never make the Suez Canal. They would never make the canal. But still, the world could pretend that, okay, you guys made it, so it's yours. But the Islamic Republic could never make that argument regarding the Suez Canal. So that's a huge difference. So if what the Islamic Republic doing is standing against the whole world, not just against the United States, it's against the whole world if they want to control the Strait of Hormuz.
I want to emphasize that nothing I am saying is an attempt to justify any position of the Islamic Republic.
I understand. No, I was just, I know, I wasn't, I know that, I know that. I know. I was just adding something to the point that you were bringing up. Yes, for
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Monkey.
I don't see any responses to this topic. I think it's fascinating. I want to look more into it, and I want to thank Nance for bringing it up. I was not aware of this, but I don't see any more responses here. So I think we can check up on those super chats.
Yes, we got one super chat from Ida. Ida saying, "Oh, I shouldn't have read it like that. Let me do it again. Sorry, I didn't know what the message was, so let me just fix that." Okay, so we got a super chat from Ida saying, "My condolences to everybody. Thank you, people in the group, for sharing your feelings, words, and stories." And then we have a hug, I think, and a heart emoji saying, "Rest in peace, Lindsey Graham," and a crying emoji. Thank you, Ida. Thank you for the message. I'm sorry for reading it wrong. I didn't know what the message is at the beginning. Thank you. I appreciate that.
My name is Armin Navabi. I'm an Iranian political analyst with decades of experience fighting the Islamic regime inside and outside of Iran. Make sure you follow me for more, and also make sure you join our discussion group. I'm there almost every single day. Come talk to me there and the rest of the people there in our group calls. It's a great place to meet and talk to people who like talking about politics. The link is in the description and or in the bio. You could also get there by scanning the QR code on the screen. See you there.